So for my next project, I'm doing another Warhammer 40k inspired lightsaber. I'm going to be making Saint Celestine's sword into a lightsaber hilt, and here are all the pieces I'm going to be using. Probably wondering why there is a brass duck here, but unfortunately the reason why is I'm going to be removing these wings and utilizing them for the crossguard here, which will be attached to this skull here. This is going to be the pommel, and I'm going to have to reduce quite a bit of, or just going to have to cut off quite a bit of this because it is super heavy. I don't mind, actually I like heavy hilts, but this metal piece is really heavy. You know, this is pretty thick brass pipe, so you're going to have to find ways to just reduce the weight just a little bit. So yeah, wings are going to go onto the skull, which will be the emitter. This is going to be the pommel, and there's going to be a lot of work done to this guy because I have to add some shapes to it to match Celestine's sword pommel as well. And I don't know exactly where I'm going to put these here, but these are very common. This is a common symbol used by the Adeptus Sororitas, and you know, they look great. They're really easy to braze onto some of these parts. So we'll see where that ends up. And then finally I'm going to be wrapping the hilt with chain, brass chain. So that'll be a first for me, but it should be fun. After that, I'm going to powder coat the most of the hilt red, and I'm going to have to color this into a more bone-like color, and the rest of it will remain brass goldish tones. So, well, the first thing I'm going to do is remove the wings from the duck and see if I can get them brazed on here in a clean way. I'm also going to have to drill a hole, which I feel really bad. This is a wonderful skull. I forget the seller, but if you're ever interested in skulls like this that you can add to your lightsaber hilt, then I'll put a little link in the description. But he does a great job with all these skulls, and there's a bunch of different kinds you can pick from. All right, so let's get going. I cut the pommel, made it shorter, and I also removed the interior of the midsection where the crystal chamber is going to be. And next I'm going to have to cut the top of the skull, which will be installed upside down like this, and then the wings will be placed on each side. So the next step will be, I'm going to draw some lines here to see how much I want to cut for this crystal chamber. This is also where I'm going to be putting the switches, so I have to keep that in mind as well. As for the pommel, I have to match the shape, which is going to be just a very long version of this guy protruding through here. I don't know, I have to see what all I have right now to match that, but I should be able to get it done. Alright, so next, cutting the crystal chamber. Alright, so next I'm going to cut off the top of the skull head to allow it to fit through the hilt. Now that I've done the outlines on the skull and on the crystal chamber, I'm going to clean them up with Dremel. And then from there, I'll move on to the wings. And finally, I'll have to figure out the pommel. Alright, so now the skull has its hole, and I can go ahead and clean up the skull and also this pipe here to get it ready for brazing. And then this guy here is going to be utilized as the blade holder, and it's not 1 inch, it's a smaller size just because I wanted to go with a smaller blade. So the next step is going to be shaping the wings to fit the skull, and also cleaning up the crystal chamber a little more. I'm going to use molding clay to get the shape of the side of the skull, which is where both wings are going to be attached. So I'm just going to transfer that shape to the wing and then get it brazed on after cleaning all these parts. So now I just have to go with the Dremel and clean up the wings a little bit just to get a tighter fit onto the skull. So I just have to clean the wings and then they're ready to go. Now I gotta put the pommel together, and I'm gonna have to cut a lot of these pieces up just to make it easier to braze. And after I braze it all together, I'm just going to smooth it out and add a couple of these guys to the sides. And then after that, I will be finishing up the interior of the crystal chamber. I'm going to have to add just some tubes to run the wires through, and also just set up something interesting for the crystal itself. So the pommel pieces are cut and they are ready to be cleaned. The crystal chamber is ready to be cleaned, and also the skull and the wings, and I guess these guys as well. So we'll go ahead and do that real quick, and then it's time to get brazing. Well, just to give an idea of what I'm doing here. So this is a steel wire brush, and as you can see the difference, this was an old duck statue. You know, it has a lot of buildup. But here you can see the difference of just like a minute of the steel brush, and it gets all shiny again and pretty. Now I'm going to braze a bunch of this stuff together. I like to use this little guy. It's a little torch with propane and oxygen, and my rods are 56% silver, a little more expensive than a lot of other rods, but I like how much it flows, and also it just it's a really strong bond. Alright, so going to braze the skull to the top portion of the hilt, and then I'm going to braze the wings, and from there start working on the crystal chamber. So I got all of the main body pieces braced together, and now it is going to be just shaping the pommel. Right now it's pretty awkward looking, and then there's a couple of touch-ups I have to do, a couple of braces I want to fix on the wings. The hard part's finished, and now it's going to be, like I said, just a little cleanup, and then the crystal chamber is going to need to be built. And I already picked out a couple of pieces for it. I'm gonna have to drill a bigger hole in this guy because this is where the crystal is going to fit in, and then I'm going to have to put some silver onto this guy so I can cut off the top portion and use that as the top part that the crystal is going to poke out of. And I got a bunch of little decals I'm gonna put on here. I believe I'm going to put one on each side. Alright, so next going to shape the pommel, and then I'm going to I guess I got to clean this top portion off too before I put any of these guys on top. Alright. I got this guy shaped. We're gonna have to do a little bit more brazing here and there, but it almost looks like a bullet, like a really big bullet. Now I gotta cut a couple of parts for the crystal chamber real quick. Going to drill a hole through this guy real quick. So now it is time for the crystal chamber to be built up. I'm going to be using the little torch for a lot of this just because it's going to be easier to get into these tight spots. So unfortunately I had to skip a bunch of the brazing just because it was becoming very difficult to pause and to reset the position and then turn the camera back on, and then I had to get the camera pretty close and I don't want to burn it down. So I ended up finishing the crystal chamber, and unfortunately I still have to figure out how I'm going to include the two buttons, the activation switch and the auxiliary switch, but that will come here after I finish with the chain. So basically I wrapped the handle here, the two handles, with brass chains, and it looks really strange right now just because I had to pick certain spots to add some silver just to hold them in place, but that discoloration and also the super obvious silver will be it would all blend into one brass color once I wire brush it all. But this one here I still have to do, and since this is you know, pretty off of I mean a little further away from the camera, I can just show you guys, because this is going to be a little different than brazing any of the other parts together, because these chains are so thin. You know, usually what you do with brazing is you have to heat up the metal, and you do not want to use the flame to melt the rod. You want the metal itself to be hot enough to melt the rod on its own. But in this situation, because the chain will heat up so fast that it'll eventually melt, I actually have to keep the rod in front of the chain, and with the flame melt the rod as the temperature hits the or as the flame also hits the chain, or else, you know, unfortunately it's going to melt. And I've been successful so far, and as you can tell, there's really not too many spots I have to do that on. Here, I can tilt it down a little bit. I'm only doing specific spots just to get one side basically all nice and firm, and yeah, I'll do the top part. After that, I still have to, I added all the decals on the side here, but I have to clean up the pommel again, just because there were some little spots I missed. But I'll show you how I'm going to try and get a perfect round cleanup on it. Words are hard. So the chain's all on there, and I also figured out what I want to do with the switch. I am going to just cut this guy. Micro switches fit perfectly into this guy, so I just have to shave off this side and then braze it onto the I don't know which one yet, top or bottom. Maybe the bottom. I think I'm going to do the bottom. So I didn't get a chance to really show much of the crystal chamber building process, and right now it's kind of hard to tell the interior just because there's a lot of buildup in there, but I'm going to put some acid on there later and get it all cleaned up. Now I'm going to smooth out that the piece that's going to hold my two switches. Now I'm going to do some battle damage. Finally finished all of the brazing. There's a little switch mount here, and then added a couple other details I wanted to add. So I'm going to do battle damage, and then after that I'm going to do the final cleanup, and I guess I have to shape the crystal as well. And then I'll shape the crystal, install that, and then it'll be ready for powder coating. This part here, I'm just going to be spraying some acid to get rid of the flux. Alright, so now I got to clean up the portion that's going to be holding the blade and just make sure that everything fits. I'm still waiting on the hilt to dry, but that shouldn't take too much longer. Alright, so it's dried. Just gotta clean this guy up, and then I'm gonna be ready to powder coat it. Now I got to clean up the interior of the crystal chamber because it's really hard to get to and I can't just brush it off. So I made a mixture here, a paste that will clean it up, and I'm not trying to get all of the grime off. I just need enough so I can blow some silver onto it to give it some cool distortion effects. Yesterday I did do a bunch of little nicks in here and there on the hilt, but I think I'm gonna do a couple more just because I just want to get a little bit more of a weather look to it. So I'm going to start with the chains. Alright, this guy's good to go. Just going to remove some of the stuff and clean up the wings a little bit. So now I have to color the skull. I'm going to start with some ivory. And then once that's done, I'm going to switch over to black to get the eye sockets, nose, all that stuff, all the details. Okay, so here it is all coated. The skull came out pretty cool. First try. Added the ivory white and then the Tuscan matte black, and I really liked it. I really like how it came out. And then I clear coated all the brass parts, and yeah, here it is. I'll be making a video with the electronics displayed and all that, but for now, that's gonna be it for this video.